Like I know diabetes can be really demoralizing. So I wanted to share like that your mindset's really got to be like, it's not the end of the world. You will find your way out of it and find a consistent routine that works for you and keeps your blood sugars stable. You just have to keep tweaking it. And it may take a year like it did for me, but your head's got to be on straight, but it'll be okay. If you can keep yourself calm down and just remember it's not the end of the world. One bad blood sugar won't be what kills you. And people know that they're probably not as healthy as they could be. I think people see it, everyone else around them, they see it. A lot of things don't actually work. I'm only going to listen to somebody that has better results than I do. So if you have better results than I do, eating sticks and leaves, okay, maybe I'll listen to you. But I haven't met anybody that has a better solution without eating meat. I haven't seen it yet.
All right. Good morning, everybody. We have Joe is returning back to give us a little update on his success story. So, Joe, it's good to see you again. How you doing this morning?
Dr. Baker, I appreciate you having me on. Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay. We're going to talk about some of this stuff. And so anyway, I'll tell you about that in a second, but I'm doing overall pretty good. But so remind us, for people that don't remember your story, it was a while back. Basically, I know you're type 1 diabetic, but give us maybe a 5-minute summary of that, and then we'll get into the update, if you don't mind.
No problem. So I'm 24 now, living in Philadelphia. When I was 17, senior in high school, the very beginning of my senior year, right before college, right before all that, it was big life changes. Just getting really sick, wetting the bed, just doing things that a normal 17-year-old is not doing. I was just drinking almost as if like you want to eat, like you craving drinks, like you crave food, like when you're hungry. A lot of unusual symptoms, unusual acne, a lot of weird things going on. Losing weight, went to the doctor, told me I was type 1 diabetic. And then from there, my life hasn't really been the same. I'm used to it now, but so spent 4 days in the hospital, got out, spent the rest of my senior year to figure out like what worked, what didn't. I had a big weight gain after I got diagnosed. I ballooned up well over, I'm 182, 3 right now. Over 200 pounds, probably 215 pounds. So a lot heavier than I am now. Just ballooned up, taking tons of insulin, eating the normal American diet back then. It wasn't working. And my mom and I realized it wasn't working. So we started experimenting a little bit. My mom started cooking me some more like keto friendly meals, chicken and broccoli and whatnot. And started going from there. And then I started going to 4 called cheat meals a week where I'd eat like maybe a sandwich or something else. And then eventually I realized, what's the point of doing this? But the only time I'm sick now is when I have a cheat meal. So I just changed the way I was eating and then went off to college and I was able to maintain for a very long time. So for the majority of my diabetic career, about 5 or 6 years of it, I was able to get by just on 1 insulin shot a day, nighttime, covered me for the whole day, A1C 5 or below. After college, the life changed a little bit, got a little more stressful, a little harder, took a job I didn't really like for a little while. Things changed up on me. So from there, I was getting sick, and I started checking my numbers because I was being a little irresponsible, didn't check my numbers for a little while, just in a rut with life. And then I realized my numbers were getting a lot higher. And then from there, I had to try and fine tune again and figure out what worked and what didn't. And then I went from keto to animal-based, more carnivore. And since then, my blood sugar has been much more under control. I take 2 shots a day now, 1 in the morning, 1 at night. I have a little cheat sheet that I've figured out based off of how I react to dosages based off where my number is or whatnot. So the last time we spoke, Dr. Baker, I believe my A1C was a 5.5. Right now I'm hovering around a 5.1 or a 5.2. I don't remember off the top of my head. I checked the app this morning, but so low 5s now, normal range. I feel good. Wake up. My blood sugar is usually between 70 and 100, somewhere in that range, usually in the 80s, 90s. And then some days I have off days, but I'm usually able to get it fixed pretty quickly. The only bad day in recent memory was actually at a jiu-jitsu competition. I intentionally took less insulin that day because I didn't want to risk going low, just because that would be, I'd rather not pass out while I'm doing that. So but that's the only day in recent memory I remember having any issues. So things have been pretty good.
Yeah, that's to have a hemoglobin A1C low 5s as a type 1 diabetic is remarkable. And there's very few that do that. Most of them run 6, 7, 8. 6 would be very low for most people, and usually 7 and 8 and 9 is quite common. And unfortunately, many physicians, endocrinologists are happy with that. And we'll keep you 6 or 7 because I think one of the concerns is hypoglycemia, and you've alluded to that a little bit with the athletic competition. And even though you're eating this very low carbohydrate diet, are you having trouble with hypoglycemia? Is that ever an issue for you?
Sometimes I think my issue is more the unpredictability of my day. So I don't work a traditional 9 to 5. I don't work, and I train at all different crazy hours. So I'm in real estate for people who don't know. So I'm sometimes like I'll have an issue where I just get so busy I don't have time to eat almost. So that is the only time if I was on a more consistent schedule, I really don't think it'd be an issue. But the only time I really do have an issue is if I haven't eaten and then I have a noon class that I go to and we're rolling, and then maybe then I get a little low, but rarely. It never happens where I feel like I'm in danger. I usually can feel it before it happens. I have not had a low blood sugar where I was surprised. I usually can feel it going down. I don't have I've never had an issue where I was like surprised. So but I more so would have an issue with going low than going high. I don't usually go high that often.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm at, and you said you take 2 shots a day. So are you taking, because for people that don't know, a lot of people that are diabetic, some of them wear a pump where they can have this steady stream going. Other people do what's called a basal bolus thing, where they'll take a very slow acting medication that lasts 12, 24 hours, 36 hours, some of them. And sometimes they'll break it up into 2 doses. And then they'll have more rapid acting to cover like meals. And it's often particularly carb based. You want a super fat rapid acting one because the carbs come on and come off so quick. One of the problems is matching those peaks because they're so fast acting, you can miss it very easily. And so I can't remember if you told me a lot of people that go very low carb or carnivore they'll often use regular insulin, which was an older insulin, but it had a much slower onset peak. It wasn't as rapid acting. It matched. It's funny how that actually matches meat consumption very nicely in a lot of people. So is that how you do it with basal bolus, I'm assuming?
I use Levemir.
Levemir.
Okay. Twice a day, once in the morning, once at night.
And that's a relatively older one too, if I'm not mistaken, I believe. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah. So it's a slow acting one that doesn't quite have the length of some of the newer analog ones. And that's it. No boluses for meals or anything like that. Yeah. That's
nope. I usually try and time my meals before I work out. Like I don't eat right when I wake up normally. Like I like to go out for breakfast on the weekends. Maybe if, we're doing something, I meet my friends, I'll go out, but I usually don't eat until noon, something like that. So it's usually before I work out. So I never really feel a need to cover with any insulin.
Okay. So you don't, yep. So if there's a correction, how do you do that? Do you have something short acting for corrections if you need it?
I usually just take a little more Levemir. Maybe I'll take 10 units or something. If I'm having an off day or something, I'll just take a little extra, maybe in the middle of the day or something, and then adjust accordingly at nighttime. If I knew that at 5 p.m. I took 10 units, maybe I'll give a little less that night just because you already have some insulin in you. So that's how I go about doing it. I don't use the fast acting. I don't really find it works that well for me just because I'll use it and then I'll go down, but then I go right back up a couple hours later. It doesn't really last.
Got it. Okay. Interesting with that. Okay. So update. I think you wanted to talk a little bit about athletics and stuff like that. So what's gone on new that you wanted to update us with?
I eat a mostly carnivore diet. The one thing I have been incorporating before workouts, and I've experimented with this a little bit, so like Greek yogurt, like that Icelandic yogurt. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's out of Whole Foods. It's pretty good. It's fairly low carb. It's not like it's maybe 6 per serving or something like that. And if I'm gonna have like a heavy like cardio workout, like go on the roll and do a bunch of rounds or whatever, I'll maybe incorporate that with my lunch. I'll have a bowl with some bread berries or something. And I've noticed it really doesn't spike my sugar unless I'm not working out after. So I've tried it both ways, before workouts and after work, and then days when I'm not working out. And it definitely will spike me if I'm not doing anything. But if I'm going to go do cardio, it doesn't really affect me. But if I'm weightlifting, actually, it'll still break my sugar up. So it's been trying to figure out what I can incorporate and when. So I've also been working out like probably about consistently twice a day, maybe a lighter workout and more intensive workout. So I've definitely noticed my A1C because the last time we spoke is when it was slightly right after I started taking 2 shots a day again, because I was trying to figure out what was the right way to handle I guess my honeymoon phase ended after 5 years. So figure out how now to handle diabetes again, just a little older, life's a little different. Yeah, just basically the A1C drop is another thing what I wanted to talk about too. Going from a 5.5 to a 5.1, it definitely has been working. Just definitely timing my meals and just figuring out what I can incorporate and not, and just pretty much sticking to mostly carnivore has really helped me it's been working. So I wanted to share that. There was definitely, what I wanted to share too is sometimes with diabetes, it's not like a one size fits all. You have to fine tune it a lot. You really have to take notes and really track how things work for you. I really want to emphasize that to people who maybe are struggling with it or a little younger like myself. You're really going to have to track it, and because your body's going to react different than everybody else. And you really got to figure out a routine that's going to work for you. Like, it's not easy. And I also wanted to touch a little more later on, like mindset kind of stuff. Like, I know diabetes can be really demoralizing. So sometimes I've been there myself, and I wanted to share like that your mindset's really got to be like, it's not the end of the world. I know I said that a little bit the last time around, but that's really where I can see a lot of people get caught up when I read maybe forums or people that are just bummed out about it, don't know what to do. Like, you will find your way out of it and find a consistent routine that works for you and keeps your blood sugars stable. You just have to keep tweaking it. And it may take a year like it did for me. I just wanted to share that. Like, your head's got to be on straight, but it'll be okay. If you can keep yourself calm down and just remember it's not the end of the world. One bad blood sugar won't be what kills you. You should be okay.
Yeah, I recently had the opportunity to interview, since the last time we've talked, Dr. Richard Bernstein, who is now 89 years of age as a type 1 diabetic. And he's been dealing with this stuff for something like 65 years, I believe, somewhere in that neighborhood. So he's obviously figured it out. He's lived along. He's outlived the life expectancy in the United States by at least a decade, probably 2 decades. And for a diabetic diagnosed back then, he probably was expected to only survive 20 years or something like that. So he's clearly shown that you can do that. And he's obviously a big proponent of very low carb diets. You mentioned that you brought your hemoglobin A1C from 5 down to, you think, somewhere around 5.1 or something like that. So the major changes that you've incorporated, if people are thinking about it, because I don't know if you talk to Bernstein, he'll say the number is like 4.8 or something like that is a magic number. And I'm not sure I don't know. I'm thinking certainly we want to get normal numbers. Do we need it quite that low? Maybe not. But what have you done majorly different, you said, since you went from 5.5 to 5.1?
Yeah, and really quick touch on that. 4.8, that would definitely be ideal. I think the tough part would be there's a lot of unpredictability to life. So I think you'd have to have your life really dialed down. You do the same things every day. You know exactly what you're eating every day. Like, you got to take a lot of the uncertainty out of it. You want to have a 4.8 A1C. That seems like not unattainable. It's just, that would seem like you'd have to really have your life dialed in for something like that. But to get to a 5.5 to a 5.1, to be honest with you, it's staying consistent with what I was doing last time. A lot of just primarily meat, like 90% meat. And then my carbs are really just come from like the animal-based stuff, like the yogurt and some berries. And that's really it. I really don't veer off it too much. And timing my meals before workouts. And it seems like it's worked pretty well. And just doing other things to keep myself calm, like sauna, try and get in the sauna every day at the gym, 15, 20 minutes if I can. I know that's good for your blood sugars and whatnot, but it's just been trying to stay consistent with things that work, do more of the things that work and less of the things that don't work. So trying to have more good days and bad days with it. And if you have a bad sugar, don't freak out, because when you freak out, like I had done in the past, you just make yourself more stressed out, and then it doesn't go down, and then you get more mad. And then, it's figuring out what works and staying consistent with it, and just not veering off, and remembering that bad days will happen here and there. But I think cutting the carbs out and eating like grass-fed, grass-finished beef and stuff like that. A lot of ground beef, flat eggs, things like that. And you got to find things that you like. And also, I'm a really bad cook, so it took me a little while to figure out how to cook ground beef the right way. I know it's not hard, but I'm really bad.
You can figure it out. It's not that hard.
Yeah,
we can all figure out how to make a decent meal. But unfortunately, it's become a lost art with a lot of younger people. And some people just don't know how to cook at all, and they're serious. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You don't know how to cook anything? You said consistency and stress plays a role, sleep plays a role. Obviously, exercise plays a role outside of food. And these things all impact our blood glucose. If you get an illness, for instance, a lot of people will notice that their blood sugars stay high during a cold or an injury or something like that. And I think there's something called stress hyperglycemia that occurs either from stressful events or an illness, which is a stress. And to some degree, that's a normal physiologic response, because there's some evidence that that increased hyperglycemia in that particular instance leads to better performance of the immune system. It's weird how these like macrophages work better or something like that. So it's interesting, because I've seen people that have said they've gotten sick. They've had a cold or something, and they just could not bring their blood glucose down. They're insulin, and it wouldn't go down. And it's because the body is fighting to keep it up for a reason. And it's an interesting thing. It's not just too much food like often it is. Okay, so I know I think you said you have a jiu-jitsu competition coming up or something like that.
Just had it. I just
Oh, you
had
just
it
had it.
today.
Okay. Remind me how long you've been doing it again. Where are you at on your jiu-jitsu journey?
But a year consistently. I started after college, but I was pretty infrequent with it for a while. So about a year consistently. I competed at blue belt, like 185 weight class. So I fought up a couple pounds, but it was fine. I ended up losing on the ref's decision, but it was a good experience. It was like one of those stage competitions where your opponent ahead of time and whatnot. So it was good. And so that's why I was doing a lot of the double workouts and stuff, because I'd get a weight workout in and a jiu-jitsu workout in. And that was working out twice and I think a day, for a lot of days a week, to help get that A1C down too. You're running pretty like a well-oiled machine that way.
Yeah, got it. And as far as a lot of people ask me, or I've constantly been, well, you can't do X, Y, or Z without carbs. You can't lift weights. You can't sprint. You can't do jujitsu. And I've done all those things without it, basically. How you don't, since you've always been this way, since you've been training, how is your, I guess, relative to other people, are you able to roll with other people without getting more tired than anybody else? Could you get tired? There's no, when you can't breathe and somebody's laying on you and you're struggling and fighting, you're going to get tired. There's no way around that. But do you find that you have pretty good energy for that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I even do it fasted, not that often, but once in a while. And I honestly think sometimes when I'm doing it fasted, haven't eaten in maybe 12, 16, however many hours, sometimes I'm even more dialed in. I'm even more focused sometimes. And I don't know if that's just me, or I've heard other people say that too when they're fasted. I think if you treat your body the right way, you're really not going to end up being that fatigued that often. Like I've seen guys that come in and they haven't trained in a while. They eat they eat a high carb diet and they eat 3 rounds and they're pretty tired. And so I can go pretty decent amount of time. And I mean, I am tired when I'm done, but that's because you're putting a lot of work in. But I feel like I could compete no problem with the low carb stuff.
Yeah, and I think that's fine. And it's funny, where I train, a lot of guys have now adopted carnivore. It's funny. So a lot of guys playing with it and trying it and doing well. And some guys come in there that need to lose weight. They particularly do that. So we have a lot of people doing that now. Now, like I said, I mentioned, because you asked me how I was doing, and I unfortunately have a little bit of a neck injury right now. And so I was actually I was kind of bummed because my whole family's out of town this week and I was going to use it to train a lot. And I got I went 3 nights in a row. And then I think it was actually the second night I injured my neck. I was going with a pretty solid wrestler and he got behind me and just drove me forward. My head rolled forward under me and I felt a strain. And I was like, okay, next strain, no big deal. And I kept going. And then I came back the next night and rolled again, and nothing, just normal stuff. Didn't feel any other kind of neck strains. But then I woke up the next day and hand is numb, fingers are numb, pain down my arm, pain in my back. It's consistent with a disc herniation in my neck. So I think I have a little herniated disc in my neck. Probably, I know it's going to be C6, C7 because it's a C7 radiculopathy that I've got. And so it's pain because I can't go back right now. That's frustrating. So I'm just kind of rehabbing, strengthening the neck, and wait till I can do that and get back. But it is something that it's a lot of fun for sure. I think you found that out, and it puts things in perspective for you. And I think it helps with irrespective of the fact that you're diabetic or not. I think it helps anybody for a lot of reasons. And so what you said, you're in real estate now. How is that going? I guess I know the housing market's been up and down over the last few years. Do you find that you're able to have a full job? There's a lot of people that are diabetics that have jobs, obviously, but do you find that the diet has made you more effective in your profession, perhaps? I know you mentioned you feel really dialed in when you're fasting. Have you noticed an improvement in performance in that side?
I think the discipline carries over. The discipline to eat a certain way and not be swayed to cheat on your diet or whatever you want to call it when you're out with friends or whatever. Like, I think the discipline that it takes to stay that consistent with what you're eating and what you're putting in your mouth and how often you're training and working out and these different things, sauna, different things you're doing. I think that discipline translates over into a lot of aspects of life, not just work, but work for sure. And if I need to stay up late and work long hours, it's no problem. I'm not getting fatigued. I'm not worn out. I feel my mental clarity I feel pretty good. Like, I don't have any brain fog ever. So I'm usually able to make the decisions that I need to make and be able to think effectively and whatnot. But the biggest thing I think is the discipline carries over. It takes a lot of discipline. It's not like you want to eat all meat all the time. I do enjoy it, a lot of the stuff, but sometimes you would want to eat something else. I'm sure get a craving for something sweeter. It just is what it is. And having that discipline, I think, is really important. It carries over. It's because if you're so disciplined in one aspect of your life, are you really not going to be disciplined at work? Like, you probably will be.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Sometimes people say if you want to get something done, give it to the busiest person, because they're
Yeah.
people that get, they're those people that are getting things done. What is your endocrine? I can't remember if we talked about this last time, but does your endocrinologist or whoever is managing your diabetes know about your diet, care about your diet, have any commentary on your diet?
So to be honest about the endocrinologist, I have not been back in a little while, but since COVID, it's my schedule. I was taking the telecalls for a while, and then I haven't really been, I haven't seen them since. So I have to actually schedule an appointment because that's something I've actually been putting off. But in the past, they've been at first skeptical, telling me it was never going to work. And then over time, they saw it was working. They just accepted it and really stopped giving me any shit about it. But it's at first they were saying we were crazy. Like I told you before, that when I was at Children's Hospital here, they thought I had an eating disorder and they wanted me to go see the dietitian or whatever, or whoever they had there. And it was basically just because I mentioned cutting out, I think, gluten at the time. I didn't even know about all this other stuff. And they thought it was crazy. I can eat anything I want and blah, blah, blah. But eventually they realized I just wasn't going to do that. So they laid off. And the older you get, I'm 24 now, not a kid anymore. So it's hard to tell me what to do. Just be like, all right, whatever. So he's going to do whatever he wants anyway.
As far as, and I can't remember if you mentioned this before, you said you were 20, 30 pounds overweight. You said 210 and now you're 180s. Do you find that with insulin, a lot of people will notice they gain weight when they go on insulin for various reasons? Either part of that is because the higher blood sugars that you're peeing off, because you mentioned when you were diagnosed, you're peeing all over the place because you probably had this profound polyuria from just super high blood glucose. Did you find that your appetite changed when you went, I guess, meat-based?
No, I think my appetite more changes the more I work out a lot. I'm hungrier. I don't really notice based off. I've had a pretty consistent appetite. And the last, even before I went like mostly fully carnivore, I was still eating a lot of meat anyway. It wasn't like I was still a lot of, I would say primarily a protein-based diet anyway, like beef, chicken, whatever. So I haven't noticed a change in appetite, no.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. So
you can eat a steak and you'll be full for a little while. So I guess in that sense, it's not if you're eating like a bag of chips, you'll still be hungry like an hour later. So I guess in that sense, like you're more satiated.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just realized I have two microphones on me.
Not worse.
To turn one of them off. I was recording some other videos. So what, as far as your plans for now, where do you go from here?
I've been thinking about that a lot myself. So I kind of figure as I get older, my life gets a little more like stable. You're in college, things are going on all day long. You're all over the place. You don't know, one day it looks different than the next. And even though my job is a consistent 9 to 5, as I get older, there are things that like I'm more routine now. So I figure just as I get a little older, my life will just be a little more routine, just a little more whatever. So I think as that happens, I'll have even tighter control over my blood sugar. I don't know how much tighter it can get from where I'm at, just to be realistic. But I think as the years go on, I'll really just know what works and what doesn't now that I'm out of this post honeymoon phase. So I think I think better control as the years go on, and just, I don't know, just swapping things that work and don't work. Hopefully I learn to make a few more things and that aren't just ground beef and eggs. But I just think as things get a little more settled, I think it just will get even better. Maybe I can get off of the 2 shots a day and go back to 1. Who knows?
Yeah, there's certainly having much better control than, say, a 5-1 or whatever it actually is. Even people that are non-diabetics often will have higher blood glucoses than that and less glycemic control. So you're probably, like I'd mentioned, it's almost in a way, even though no one wants to have diabetes, particularly any type 1, particularly because it's one of those things you're stuck with for your life, but it can change your behavior in a very good way. So now you're like, okay, you'll probably avoid all the other things that you might not have. You might have just eaten like everybody else if you didn't have diabetes and end up overweight and heart disease, arthritis, whatever, type 2 diabetes perhaps. And now you know how to avoid all that stuff. So it's going to have a downstream positive effect. And for you, it's 2 shots a day that's 12 seconds of activity. And it's not like it's changing your life tremendously. Yeah, it's a minimal type of thing. I guess the problem is if you got to have it with you when you travel and whatever, keep it cool or something so it doesn't go bad and things like that. So there are a little bit of issues, but it's not the end of the world for sure. You mentioned, I think we talked last time, we talked about online groups and things like that. So we did this podcast a while back. Have you gotten any more people asking you stuff, or have you been able to impact some other people with your experience?
Yeah, the last podcast that we did, I got a lot of positive feedback. Had a lot of friends that watched that. I was actually surprised at some of the people who reached out to me and said they watched it. So that was good. And then I have since then I've gotten some more questions. I mentioned last time, my brother eats pretty similar to how I eat. He's probably about 90% this way, and then 10% maybe other stuff. But he's pretty consistent with it, and you can tell the way his body's changed. He's gotten much more muscular and stuff from doing it, and he does jiu-jitsu too. He's in pretty good shape from eating like this as well. And he's like raw eggs, puts them in a shake and does all that stuff. So he's pretty consistent with it. And I've noticed roommates making some changes with what they're eating. I've noticed people around me definitely making changes, just because if you want to lose weight or whatever, like eating a more carnivore based diet is definitely, it's not just you have to be diabetic. Like if you want to make positive health changes, like that's definitely a good way to go about doing it. So I definitely have noticed there's been more questions. People be more interested in it. I think these things are all these like ideas like eating carnivore and whatnot are becoming more popular anyway. So I think there's an appetite for it. Just the general population, I think people want to know. I think people know that they're probably not as healthy as they could be. I think people see it, everyone else around them, they see it. A lot of things don't actually work that like a doctor would say you can eat whatever and work out and do this and that. But I think a lot of people realize that most Americans aren't that healthy. So I think there is a desire to learn more when they see something working for someone like me who has a type 1's a pretty serious, issue. I think when they see that this is working for me, I think they're definitely interested.
Yeah, for sure. With regard to type 1 diabetes, there's always thought that down the road, pancreas transplants and certain treatments to potentially cure it, and nothing's ever shaken out so far. And they've been trying to look for that for probably 40 or 50 years now. I'm just wondering if there were a cure for type 1 diabetes, one, would you do it? And two, would you change your diet afterwards?
A cure, like a pancreas transplant? I don't know if I'd be sold on that. That'd be a tough sell. I'd have to see somebody else do it first. But I don't see myself ever changing my diet after this. There's just no way. I'm too red-pilled, I guess you would say, to the way that there's just no way I go back to the standard American diet. There's just no way. I see what it does to everybody else. People don't, the brain fog, it's hard to keep your weight down. You don't feel good. All these other potential issues like cancer, heart attacks, anything that can happen. Like, no way. I feel good. I feel good this way. So there's no way I would change it now. Yeah. And but a cure, if there was just a cure, like I take a pill and I'm not diabetic anymore, sure, I would take it. But a pancreas transplant, I don't think so. I'd rather stick to the way I'm doing it now. This has been working just fine. Yeah,
pancreas transplant, obviously. And I think they actually they might have started playing with those. I believe they have. Problem is immunosuppressive drugs and all the other issues that come with that. So you're trading one chronic medication for another, for probably multiple other chronic medications, just so you can. It's one of those things. I trade insulin for anti-rejection drugs? Which one's better or worse? Interestingly, and it's something that not a lot of people talk about. Your endocrinologist probably doesn't talk about it. There's studies out there showing that type 1 diabetics that use more insulin, that use more, have a much higher rate of cancer, which is an interesting thing. And so there is an incentive to not need as much insulin. You need enough to keep your blood sugar in a normal range, but beyond that, like I said, and why is it the insulin itself, the high levels of insulin, or is it the food that you're eating that causes the insulin to be required in higher amounts? I think that's unknown. It's an interesting thing. Do you have?
Yeah, I've heard of that as well.
Yeah. Do you have? Are you getting? I mean, I can't imagine someone would want to do this, but are you getting people that are like down on you, negative on you, bad guy? Hey, how dare you eat meat and all that type of stuff? No one's doing that to you.
If they do, it's going in one ear and out the other. That's not whatever. Listen. I'm only going to listen to somebody that has better results than I do. So if you have better results than I do eating sticks and leaves, okay, maybe I'll listen to you. But I haven't met anybody that has a better solution without eating meat. I haven't seen it yet. And I see your Instagram posts. I see some of the stuff you're posting with the vegans, the vegetarians, the stuff, and it's the funny stuff. But yeah, there's no way. Nobody's really come down on me too hard.
That's good. A lot of folks that get out there and talk about the benefits of eating meat have often come under attack from people that are just ideologically driven towards eating animals is bad, and you're an evil person and you're an animal abuser and all this nonsense.
Oh yeah.
But it's you mentioned other methods, sticks and leaves, and there's a group of I guess plant-based people. They call them the mastering diabetes philosophy, where they eat just an incredibly low amount of fat. It's like the least amount of fat you can possibly consume. They count any fat you get in fruit, like how much fat's in an orange, and they're counting that, which is minimal. And so they are able to basically, their good results are their blood glucose is 6.5 or something like that, that's not that good. But that they would laud that as good results. And they claim that they can eat more carbs and take relatively less insulin because they've just become so, I guess, carb desensitized that they're eating this massive amounts of carbohydrates, but their A1Cs are not that good. And that's one of those things where I imagine if I told you to eat 6 pounds of fruit a day, you probably would have blood glucoses. You'd probably be in DKA or something like that, I would imagine. I don't know.
I would think.
Yeah, so that's one of those things. Do you, one of the criticisms of a carnivore diet is it's too expensive. Now you said you're doing a lot of ground beef and stuff like that. It can't be that expensive to do this diet from your perspective, is it?
I mean, you go to the grocery store, everything's expensive now. I don't know. You look at whatever they have, the pressed juices and stuff. That's all expensive too. If you're eating, it's just at the end of the day, you're more full eating this way anyway. So you would eat less theoretically. It's not. I don't really find it more expensive than anything else. Ground beef's not that expensive. It's not cheap. Nothing cheap right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's for sure. As far as, here's the other thing, because when I go to jiu-jitsu, I'm drenched. I'm usually sweating like crazy, summertime particularly. How do you manage fluid and electrolytes? Is that something you have to be mindful of?
I actually take those Redmond Real Salts, the Relight. I put it in my water bottle every morning, and I try and take it right when I wake up before my morning cup of coffee. I usually am good about doing that. Sometimes I don't, but I like the taste of it. So I usually have 1 or 2 of those electrolyte drinks a day at the very least, and that keeps me feeling pretty good. I notice I cramp up just because I'll go to the sauna every day and I'm doing jiu-jitsu and whatnot. You lose a lot of sweat. Magnesium supplements as well. I've been mindful of taking those. The electrolyte drinks. I think that's important for anybody, diabetic or not. I definitely feel a lot better when you do that. Like my feet will cramp up too, especially. So I haven't really noticed that anymore ever since I started getting on the magnesium and the electrolytes.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I know some people will notice cramping with fasting, dehydration, calorie reduction. There's a lot of reasons why that tends to happen. And some people will assume, well, it's just because I'm not eating carbs. I'm saying there's some other things on top of that typically that occur, because there's a lot of people that do this diet without cramping. And I notice whenever I have cramps, it's usually related to pretty significant dehydration, significant activity. And so I usually am able to fix that by eating enough, staying hydrated. Are there any negative effects of the diet so far?
All right. So say I don't want to cook. I live in a big city. I'm in Philadelphia, like center city. I'm in the center of town. Sometimes on Uber Eats, or if you don't want to make something, the options aren't always that great. Or if you want to end up getting, all right, so say you get an omelet for breakfast, say you're starving, you had a long night, whatever. So you get an omelet. Okay. It comes with a side of potatoes. So you can't eat that. So then you got to get a side of bacon too. So then if you want to order food, could end up being like $30. So that's when I guess could be expensive. So that's definitely, I guess, a downside is there are a lot of options, but then sometimes you're forced to go to a place like Chipotle, which I like Chipotle, but I know they use seed oils. I know they use stuff like that. So not my preference, but yeah, sometimes it can be annoying that way, but those are really the only downsides I could think of. I feel good. So that's the most important thing. Sometimes the choices you have available to you aren't always ideal, but especially when you travel and you go to more like off the grid places. I've been to small towns in Italy and stuff that maybe there's still a lot of options, but sometimes they're not as up to date with these diets and stuff that we are, or other random places I've been in Mexico or whatever, but I not that many downsides.
Yeah, and traveling always makes it more. In fact, tomorrow I'm taking off for a couple of weeks. I'll be traveling throughout mostly France and Greece, and so I'll have to figure out those things while I'm there. And I think actually they'll both be probably pretty easy, to be honest, but it does throw you off your routine. Let's see, you've got this sort of normal thing. And how much, you said you're 185, how much food do you eat a day? What's a typical day look like?
It depends. So usually I'll have Let's think. So I eat my first meal. So let's say I have a bowl of ground beef, maybe an egg or two on top, put sour cream on top. It's pretty good like that. And then maybe I'll have some of that yogurt before I go work out. That's usually my pre-workout meal. And I like those carnivore snacks, the carnivore crisps. Those are all pretty good. I'll eat maybe a bag or so of those. Maybe I'll cook up a steak for dinner. Maybe if I'm going out, I'll get some burgers, no bun. But it's usually just a mix of these different things. Maybe some chicken sometimes, but I don't really like chicken that much. But a lot of ground beef, a lot of like those, the keto bricks. We talked about that last time. Sometimes I'll have those before I work out. Or if I want like a snack before I go to bed, the keto bricks, maybe I'll have one of those and I just up the insulin a little bit. And I don't recommend eating before bed, but sometimes you get hungry before bed. It happens. A lot of stuff like that. The keto bricks, ground beef, eggs, the carnivore crisp, things like that. Different things that are easy to transport. Sometimes you go out, like I said, Chipotle, get stuff like that. I have like other things you get from Costco, other like steak things you can cook up, and like the sous vide ones are pretty good. So just different things like that, but a lot of the same stuff, just different ways.
Yeah. Okay. And I think the keto bread, I know Robert Sykes. He's a guy that does that company. I think they're 1,000 calories each, and they're very high fat. I think they're 80% fat and a little protein. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the fat source is cocoa butter. If I'm not mistaken, he may have a different version now as well. But I know that was what he was using back last time I talked to him about it. But do you as far as, let me go back to jiu-jitsu. You had your first competition. What is your goal there? Are you going to continue training indefinitely? Are you planning on competing in the sport?
Yeah, see how good I could do it. Why not? I'm doing pretty decent with it. By no means the best, but I've noticed pretty steady improvement over the last year. So, I got my blue belt fairly quickly and whatnot. So I did one tournament before, but it was more like a grappling industries where you have 8 matches. This one was just like a one-on-one where you have 5-minute round. But yeah, just keep seeing where I can go with it. Well, I have all this time too. I'm almost in my mid-20s now, but I don't have a wife or kids or anything. So I have time to pursue these hobbies outside of work. So just see where it goes, see what happens. Keep working hard at it, keep training, keep going as much as I can, and then just train intentionally. I think now is more of my goal. Try and train and work on certain moves, work on getting out of certain positions, like really work on certain things, go to every class to goal, but see how good I can get. I'll keep doing more of these local and regional tournaments and seeing based off my work schedule and whatnot, and just seeing how good I end up being. But I have been liking it a lot.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's definitely easier when you don't have a family to contend with.
Yeah.
And it becomes infinitely harder to schedule things and try to still, because the family needs obviously time as well.
Yep.
Are you outside of jiu-jitsu, any other type of training, like lifting, strength training, those types of stuff?
Yeah, I go to the gym fairly often. And that's where so even I go to the gym, I try and be at the gym every day, but I don't necessarily lift weights every day. Some days I just sauna, but I lift the weights at least 4 days a week. So I've noticed that's been pretty good. I'm pretty cut up, I would think, but just because I've been doing it consistently. Like I don't have it in my head that I want to bench 700 pounds. It'd be cool if I could, but I don't necessarily have any weightlifting oriented goals. Just stay strong and get stronger as the years go on and try and look good. But otherwise, I play men's league basketball like on Tuesday nights, for a couple months out of the year. Just something different. I'm not that good. I'm not that bad. Just whatever. Go if I do good, great. But no, I don't care. But it's fun. You get to see my buddies. We can play together. So I like that. Just a little thing to change it up. I don't have any goals with it. Just I would like our team to win the championship at some point. We'll see if that ever happens. But just doing whatever.
Yeah, I think when it comes to injury prevention, injury avoidance, strength training is huge. There's actually studies out there, research on stretching, strength training, proprioceptive training, and by far, strength training was most likely to protect you from an injury. Yeah. As you're getting ankle locked and arm barred and like neck, my neck is injured. And I honestly, I wasn't diligent enough about training my neck. I've trained most of the other part of it, slacked on it, so I have to start that. I'll start working on that a little more to further reinforce that, but that's going to be helpful down the road. The sauna, what prompted you to start doing a bunch of sauna? Was there and how does that affect your blood glucose, out of curiosity?
I had a buddy introduce it to me like a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I started getting consistent with it around then, probably about March of 22, I want to say. I did some research on it. Apparently it's good for your blood glucose. Apparently it's good, prevents a lot of different things. It can prevent cancer, it can prevent like heart disease. So apparently it's pretty good for you. I All I know is I feel really good when I'm done, and my blood sugars are usually pretty good. And I think that has been helping. It keeps me relaxed. So I think I've noticed stress definitely has a big impact on my blood sugar. So if nothing else, if it keeps me relaxed and I'm not stressed out, that has to have some impact. But I feel great when I come out. I usually try and sit in there for about 20 minutes at 180 degrees. I bet it's definitely a game changer just for your mental health. I think it's great. Not many things you can do that make you feel better than that.
Yeah, one of the things, because I was looking up diabetes and sauna just out of curiosity, and one of the concerns is that insulin, if you dose yourself with insulin and go sit in a sauna, they're concerned that the heat make it absorb super fast, and so you may precipitate hypoglycemic episodes. That's one thing just to be mindful of for those diabetics out there thinking about sauna. There is some concern around that, although it's probably, as long as if you're wearing like a CGM or something like that, you can obviously, or if you're pretty clued in on how you feel, you can feel a hypoglycemic coming on in many cases. Some people they can't feel hypoglycemics, then that's a problem, because then they can get really low and have bad consequences. And that's one of the concerns people have. But as long as you can detect that either through a machine or something like that. Did you mention, I think, were you wearing a CGM? I can't remember if you told me that.
Nope.
Okay, you just check it just by
just
checking your finger pricks, and you're assuming that you're going to come up with about a 5.1. Okay. What is, as far as the typical daily range for you then? Where's your blood glucose? Where is it spending most of its time?
So usually wake up in the 80s or 90s, sometimes in the 70s, not as often, but 80s, 90s stays consistent. I take that insulin shot in the morning. It stays consistent around there until I eat. Maybe it goes up over 100, maybe to 130 or something, but then it usually goes back down on its own. And then by a couple hours later, I'm back down to like the 90s. And then say maybe if I eat again, goes up a little bit again. And then I try not to eat a ton of carbs at night though. So unless it's right before I give insulin, then I'll just up the insulin dose. But so it doesn't really go too far above 100 unless there's 130 after I eat, unless there's special circumstances, like I didn't work out or something else. But the range, it usually doesn't go too crazy. You know, I think I checked before this, my last 7 days, I was averaging like 96 or something like that.
Yeah, it's those numbers are all within what's normal human. Usually, most people say 70 to 140 is completely normal physiologic range, and so you sound like you're pretty much always within that range, which is quite good for, particularly type 1. Do you, as far as one of the concerns with diabetes in general, type 1, or many of the concerns are kidney function, eye function. Have you had your eyes examined, or did they make you do that at some point when you got started?
Yeah, like a year ago, there was nothing.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And the interesting thing, because a lot of people that are critical of this style of managing diabetes, they'll say, you're just masking the symptoms. If we made you drink a slug of glucose, your blood glucose would go up. But then what I find what's interesting is I've seen people with the disease, the retinal disease, the kidney disease, and then they go low carb or carnivore or ketogenic, and those things reverse. So it's more than just masking the disease. You're actually reversing some of the downstream effects, which I think is, to me, much more powerful than just you're masking the disease, which a lot of people will say. Do you have, I think we probably talked about it the last time, and I'll ask it again, family on board with your diet? They're not worried about cholesterol and you're going to kill yourself because you're eating meat or anything like that, are they? Yeah,
the family's very supportive. My parents eat pretty similar to how I'm eating now too. They eat a little more carbs, but it's at least my immediate family, there's been a lot of buy-in. Like my brother eats very similar to me. My parents eat fairly similar to me. Their dog that they got a year ago eats fairly similar to us. He's on a carnivore diet. He's not really eating kibble or anything. So it's pretty consistent buy-in from everybody. If it works so well for me, why wouldn't you want to incorporate it? You know what I mean? And I've noticed too, I don't know if there's something to this, but I think people's skin look better when they're on the carnivore diet. Like I've noticed that, like the skin looks more clear, not really breaking out. I don't know if that's related or not, but I think I've noticed that from people who eat a lot more meat, their skin starts looking a lot better too. So I don't know if there's anything to that, but I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, a lot of people have seen improvements with skin conditions, psoriasis, eczema, rosacea, seborrheic keratosis. All these things often will improve on the diet. Skin tags, which is a sign of hyperinsulinemia, more or less. So it's interesting to see that. as well. Let me think if there's anything else I wanted to ask you here. I'll leave it to you. Is there anything else you wanted to share that we didn't get to because we're getting close to coming up on our time, and anything else that, I guess share where people can, I think you have social media, so share that. And if there's anything else you wanted to, because you said you wanted to go a little bit into
the mindset.
Yeah.
So for starters, my Instagram, Joe_Arnold, ARNOLD_. That's my Instagram handle. I'm public. So if you have any questions, you can add me as a friend and shoot me a message. I'd be happy to answer. Can't guarantee I'll get back to you right away, but I'll look at it eventually. And in terms of mindset, I want to reiterate, I know it can be, I wish I touched on this a little more last time. I know, especially if this is new to you, or let's say you've always had bad results for 10 years, you've been diabetic, but you can change a lot of the problems you're having. Like, you really can get better results in just 6 months to a year of just being diligent with it. And you probably notice things right away if you start buckling down, but you really just have to, your head's got to be on straight. You have to accept that it sucks. That discipline you get from being consistent really will trickle into other areas of life and really will serve you. So you really just have to take the bad days for what they are. It's just one bad day. It's a blip. It's not going to last forever. And you just got to stay consistent. And remember, it's not the end of the world. It's tough. It sucks, but there are worse things than being diabetic. There are better things. You obviously don't want it, but it's not the end of the world. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, as these doctors make it out to be, as people who don't really know what you have going on make it out to be. Like, people think it's this big, scary disease. I mean, which it is, but it's not without, you can control it. You can, through your behavior and through just being extremely diligent, you can fix a lot of your problems. So it's not the end of the world, and you can have a very happy and fulfilling life and pursue your passions and travel and do whatever it is you want to do. You just have to get it under control, and that could take a little while, but once you do, you'll be so glad you did. So it's especially to people who are just diagnosed or have never just had it under control. Like, you can take control of this. Like, you don't have to let it ruin your life. So you just got to take it in stride and just put your best foot forward and not get discouraged, because you will be. There's so many resources available now, so many more than when I got started 6-7 years ago. So you just got to keep your head on straight and keep moving. So it'll be all right.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's encouraging. And I will just say that for diabetes can be an awful disease. It can really affect every aspect of your life in a very negative way. But like you mentioned, if you take control of it, you can minimize that and even have a better life and quality of life than people that don't have diabetes. So I think it's doable. So anyway, so Joe_Arnold_, that's where they find you on Instagram. Joe, thanks for the update. Congrats on continued success, and look forward to seeing more. So anyway, for the rest of you guys, thanks everybody. We have another one of these at 1 p.m. today, another interview. So if anybody cares to come on and check that one out. Joe, thanks. Appreciate it, man.
Dr. Baker, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you everyone for tuning in. Really appreciate it.
All right. See you guys later. Bye-bye, everybody.